Hey guys, it's Andy. I'm so glad to be back with you again this week as we continue our series of God Time devotionals going through the book of Mark. Now, in our passage today, Mark looks back at a moment in history when John the Baptist was beheaded by King Herod. And the main point I want us to focus on today is that in the Christian life, opposition is not a sign of failure. But before we get to that part of the story, I want to set up the passage very quickly because sometimes in the New Testament, I think it can be somewhat confusing because there are so many Herods mentioned. The King Herod in this part of the story is not the same King Herod who was reigning in Israel when Jesus was born. Now, that guy, he was King Herod the Great, and this guy had a very big ego. In fact, sort of like George Foreman, the boxer, and of like the fame of the Foreman Grill, George Foreman named all 5 of his sons George. Well, just like that, Herod the Great named all of his children after himself. The King Herod in our passage today was known as Herod Antipas. Now, if we're going to understand what was going on when John the Baptist confronted Herod Antipas about his sinful relationship with his wife Herodias, you need to have a little perspective on just how sinful and, quite frankly, just how weird their relationship was. It all began a few years earlier when Herod Antipas went to visit his brother Herod Philip. Now, for the sake of clarity, Herod Philip is usually just referred to as Philip. Okay. Now, while they were meeting with each other, Herod Antipas met a woman who he became obsessed with, and this woman's name was Herodias. Now, there were only a few problems in the way of Herod Antipas and Herodias' love. 1, he was married. 2, she was married. In fact, she was married to Herod Antipas's brother, Herod Philip. And 3, she was actually the daughter of one of Herod Antipas's half-brothers. Ooh, right? John Ortberg has pointed out that all of these details make it sound like this story is coming straight out of a convoluted plot from a soap opera like One Life to Live. Can you imagine the wedding between Herod Antipas and Herodias? Because when he marries her, she simultaneously was his wife, his niece, and his ex-sister-in-law. Now, because Herod Antipas is the king, he's able to get away with all of this. No one stands up to him. No one gets in the way of what Herod wants. Until John the Baptist arrives on the scene. Now, if you remember the Old Testament prophet that John the Baptist is most frequently compared to, it's Elijah. And if you recall, Elijah stood up to another husband and wife duo who were leading Israel astray, King Ahab and Queen Jezebel. Now, as a result of Elijah's confrontation, Ahab and Jezebel try to kill Elijah. Now, if you read Elijah's story carefully, you will notice that the driving force behind trying to kill Elijah, it wasn't Ahab, it was Jezebel. And it's the same dynamic in our passage with John the Baptist. We see in verse 20 that Herod Antipas liked to listen to John and protected him. But Herodias, she has a grudge against John the Baptist and she wanted to kill him. Well, she got her chance one day when Herod was having a banquet for his officials, and her daughter Salome comes in to dance for Herod. Now, we get the sense that this is not like some beautiful ballet. This is something very sensual and sexual and even weirder than some of the things that have already come in this story. But for saying something about the character of Herod, he's pleased with Salome's dance, and he basically offers her whatever she wants. And Salome's mother, Herodias, tells her, "You should ask for John the Baptist's head on a plate." Herodias is able to accomplish what Jezebel could not accomplish, and she puts God's prophet in Israel to death. I actually believe that this is what Jesus is going to be referring to in Mark chapter 9, verse 13, when he told his disciples after the transfiguration, "But I tell you, Elijah has come, and they have done to him everything they wished, just as it is written about him." Now, I share all of this with you as background because I want you to understand something very clearly. Opposition is not a sign of failure. John the Baptist wasn't operating outside of God's will for his life when he confronted Herod and Herodias, and his death was not a sign that God was disappointed or displeased with him. I think this is important for us to remember because all of us are going to face people who intimidate us. We will all face our own Herod or Herodias. So today I want to ask you, who's scaring you? Who's threatening you? If you're like me and have been a people pleaser your whole life, it might take every ounce of courage you can muster just to stand up to someone and speak the truth to them. Now remember, when we do that, we speak the truth boldly, but we also speak the truth in love. But when we do that, when we stand up, when we speak the truth, we must never forget that if they push back at you and they probably will, opposition is not a sign of failure. It's not a sign of being outside of God's will. And at this point, I recognize that really I'm just speaking to myself, because this is something that I so often struggle with. You see, I want people to like me. I want people to think I'm a good person. And so when I pray, I have a tendency to ask God to rescue me from difficulties and to give me new circumstances where I will be safe and secure and comfortable. But when we experience fear, John the Baptist reminds us, opposition is not a sign of failure in the Christian life. Following Jesus isn't about praying and asking God to give us a new setting where we will be safe, secure, and comfortable. It's about trusting and obeying God in our current situation. This is what courage really looks like. This is the courage that Moses had when he went to confront Pharaoh. This is the courage David had when he went to confront Goliath. This is the courage that Elijah had when he went to confront Ahab and Jezebel. And this is the same courage that John the Baptist had when he went to confront Herod and Herodias. Opposition is not a sign of failure. It isn't pleasant and it will never be easy, but it is an opportunity for you and me to place our faith in Jesus, the one who had the courage to face opposition and go and confront the cross. God bless you guys. We'll see you tomorrow.